otherwise. Sharia law in London, in Manchester, in Sweden commits acts of terror every day.
What is Sharia law?
Sharia law is against the Constitution.
What is it though? What is it though?
Okay, all right. So let's nitpick. Let's split hairs. Let's split hairs and argue about that.
Tell me what Sharia law is.
But Sharia law is what killed doctors in Afghanistan.
What is it?
Well, who's in Afghanistan now?
He doesn't know.
I will admit, I am not.
Don't make it sound what Sharia law was. You have yet to say one thing about what Sharia law is.
Because I'm not a Sharia scholar. I'm not a Sharia scholar.
Then how can you be against it? So this past weekend, my father and I went to Lower Manhattan to check out the dueling demonstrations over the Ground Zero Mosque, which isn't really at Ground Zero, nor is it actually a mosque. We went there as spectators of both rallies, neither supporting nor being against the opening of Park 51. But we knew that we were bound to find a lot more ugliness and aggression from the people protesting against it. Don't get me wrong, not everyone who was opposed to the community center was a screaming nutcase. Some of them were very polite and cordial.
Because this is not Ground Zero, right?
Yeah, it's not, but I'm telling you,
It's all Ground Zero.
How far does Ground Zero go?
As far as every fragment of bone went.
How do you know that?
Thousands of feet.
Well, did it go all the way down to like Church Street or Canal Street?
The landing gear went through the top of the
I was here. I saw the plane hit the building. I was here.
You know that
I went through the Trade Center 15 minutes before it happened.
Right.
All right?
You know
So
that.
there's nothing you can tell me about what happened that day. My question is, how do you know how far the bone fragments went? They're still finding fragments.
Right.
well, let me put it this way. If they were willing to move it, even a few blocks away, a big bulk of antagonism would disappear.
Do you think so?
Yes, I do.
Sharia law is Islams have another set of laws. In other words, that apply to them, and therefore, what they want to do is implement their laws to either supersede our Constitution, and they would be able to deal with their own people. It wouldn't immediately. It wouldn't affect the average citizen, but for instance, women would be condemned for things such as adultery, or let's say if they were accused of something, they would determine what retribution, what punishment she would receive. So in other words, this would apply. It's completely counter to our Constitution. They already have the punishment determined in their laws, in the Sharia law.
Okay.
What enormous brass these people had to put up signs about Sharia law and rewarding terrorism when referring to a community center in downtown Manhattan. Now, one can make the argument that because all those horrible laws come straight from the Quran, that must mean that every practicing Muslim has to be all for it. But then one could say the same thing about all Christians being in favor of all the barbaric biblical laws dealing with slavery, executing gays and adulterous women, and all other fun stuff. And we know that's not true. Let me be clear. I don't like Islam any more than I like Christianity, Judaism, or any other religion which has caused the world as much needless bloodshed, oppression, divisiveness, and willful ignorance. I despise religion, but I despise self-righteous bigots even more, especially when they try to hide their prejudice behind a banner of freedom and patriotism and a feigned concern for the families of 9/11 victims.
Folks, are you with the coalition?
No,
No.
sir. We're just individuals.
We don't support Christianity or Islam. We think it's all bullshit that they're doing here today. It's to feed ignorance and hatred. You know? That's what it is.
So you're just representing yourselves. You're not.
Freedom of speech! Ironic, isn't it? This woman came to a protest demonstration with the express intent to denounce the opening of a community center with anti-Muslim rhetoric, and she admonishes my father for not having something nice to say.
Neither.
Don't argue with these knuckleheads. Don't fucking argue with them.
Why don't you support America? This is
a symbol of our country.
What about the Americans who want to go to that community center?
This is guilt by
I
association.
love big, loud, dumb people.
You
I
are a
love
big, loud, done person.
I love big,
Let me
loud,
explain
dumb
something
people.
to you. Did you lose somebody on 9/11? Did
No.
you like somebody to move next to your bodies?
There's no bodies here.
There is too. It's part of a grave.
There's no body buried here.
Are you kidding me? Do you know how many people lost their lives that have nothing to prove?
3,000.
How many people have something to prove for it? Supporting Nazis.
What about the
bullshit.
What about the
Two
Americans?
white, two blacks.
What do the Americans who have lived here for generations have to do with the people who attacked the World Trade?
It's guilt by association.
So because they're Muslims, so because they're Muslims, they're guilty.
Ignorant, non-American. When you want to expect
I'm a veteran, woman. I am a veteran. That was the first time someone has called me a non-American to my face. I know I can pass for a foreigner, but my family's been in this country since long before it was a country. Not that it matters. I'm also a veteran, as you can plainly hear me trying to tell her. I served in the military twice, 6 years in the Air Force and a year and a half in the Army National Guard. I wonder how long she served.
Respect America!
You respect America!
I respect America! I live with America! I am...
While this harpy screamed at me about respecting America, she conveniently forgot that she was supporting the attempt to oppress her fellow Americans because of their religion, a direct assault on the First Amendment, one of America's most prized possessions. We're not talking about foreigners here. We're talking about people whose families have been in this country for generations and haven't done anything to anyone, and many of whom are completely amalgamated into American life. I know. I live right next to them. I went to school with them. I don't see them as any more different from me than every other demographic that I don't necessarily belong to.
You are just a loud... Back up! Don't put your finger in my face.
I'll put your finger in my face if I want. Go to hell!
Shut up
I'm
and go
sorry,
away,
sir, I
you
couldn't
big
hear you.
dumb bastard.
Because she refused to shut the hell up, I didn't get a chance to ask her much, including her thoughts on the already existing mosque, Masjid Manhattan, that is located just 4 blocks from the World Trade Center site. But I doubt I would have gotten any sense out of her anyway.
What about your freedom? What about your freedom?
Are fighting for freedom.
Go ahead, you're fine.
They're not fighting for freedom. I can tell you that right now.
Who killed them?
The big burly one on the left, as we later found out, is from a group of Tea Party members who came from West Virginia. I don't know why they think a New York community center is any of their concern, but that's the media for you, attracting crazies everywhere. At this point in the skirmish, he pulled his young son into the fray, and this little boy started screaming along with him at the adults. I lost my head and started yelling at him to get the boy out of there. With all that yelling, what if a fight had broken out? That child would have been hurt, and it would have been this big ape's fault for putting his son in harm's way.
Oh no! Now you're gonna get your kid to yell hate shit out.
Why are you done with them? You're gonna let them win? Yeah, you're right.
Win?
You're gonna let your kid just like the West Barrel
Get the child out of here!
Hey, why is this kid doing this? That's
And then there was this guy.
Okay, so you're saying it's the whole thing is made up?
Jesus said he is well. I'm an atheist. He said everybody's Christ. He said one. And that includes women. If he's over there, he's going to say, you know what, we're not going to let women pray in the same place. But why should that be put up at all? If you're
Private center. It's private.
you're going to say that's for freedom for all Muslims. If you're going to say that's freedom for all Muslims, then why is it women cannot pray?
You telling me that's your only grievance? Telling me that's the only problem you have with this?
No, that's the only problem.
Unlike so many on his side, this man was an atheist and claimed that his grievance against the center was the practice of separating women from men during prayer. When I asked him if he was then against all mosques, because that's what they all do, he said no and accused me of putting words in his mouth. When others reminded him that Hasidic Jews do the exact same thing, he had to concede that he was against that too. But if he was not in favor of closing all buildings for prayer that practice this kind of separation, then why have such an issue with this particular one? Because it was too close to the big hole in the ground that you can't actually see from Park 51. And if that wasn't enough, these fruitcakes started playing Born in the USA over the loudspeaker. That is not a patriotic song. On the contrary, it's a song about veterans losing their sense of patriotism after getting reamed by the government. Way to go, you clowns. Reagan did the exact same thing during his 1984 presidential campaign and ended up looking like a big doofus. And Bruce Springsteen is not the kind of person who would have stood on the side of these nationalistic right-wing fanatics. He is known for his liberalism, as he campaigned for both John Kerry and Barack Obama and performed at Obama's inauguration. And by the way, what were they implying by playing Born in the USA? That Muslims aren't born in the USA? I mean, aside from the ones that were. They also had speakers, and I only heard the opening of one of them as we were leaving. A woman who had barely started her speech, and she already sounded totally pissed off. She began with, "I am an American," and then, "I am a woman," and finally, "I am a Jew." What a way to begin a speech. I'm an American, I'm a woman, two things that are not much more than the accidents of birth and circumstance that they are, and are completely inconsequential. As if she had something to do with her double X chromosomes, or the fact that she slithered out of her mother on American soil. But the part about her being a Jew was the one that hit me with so much irony. You would think she would have been a little bit more sensitive to those who are facing religious persecution. For those of you who would side with people like them, I have some questions for you. How can you support the opposition of a pseudo-mosque in close proximity to the World Trade Center without equating all Islam with terrorism? How can this protest be justified? And please don't start with the Kandelian comments about there being no such thing as moderate Muslims. I don't care who you are. If that is your position, then you are as narrow-minded and unreasonable as the people in this footage, so don't bother wasting my time. There are liberal Christians, Reformed Jews, and moderate Muslims. If you believe that all Muslims and everything Islamic is supporting Sharia law, then I have a second and third question. Are you then in favor of closing all mosques, regardless of where they are? And if so, how would this not infringe on the First Amendment right to free exercise of religion? Remember, the Free Exercise Clause prohibits any attempt to discriminate based on religion, and considering that several churches are allowed to remain even closer to the World Trade, how then is this not an example of religious discrimination? If you believe that an Islamic center close to the World Trade Center is disrespectful and insensitive to the families of 9/11, then please answer the question that no one at the protest could answer. What do the 9/11 terrorists have to do with the people who live around here, some of whom also lost family members inside the World Trade Center? And if your only answer is Islam, therefore ignoring the many different sects of the religion and the intensity and harshness of some of its adherents in contrast with more laid-back followers, that I can just as easily turn this around on any group with the same logic. If you're Christian, then you're automatically in the same category as the KKK, American slave owners during the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries, and the inquisitors who burned thousands of people as heretics during the Dark Ages. If Park 51 is too close to where so many people were killed, then perhaps we shouldn't have any churches in the U.S. at all, for every piece of land we stand on was robbed from the Native Americans that the Christian Europeans exterminated. How disrespectful to the very few descendants they have left. If you're an atheist, well, you already know where you are. You stand in the same group as Mao and Lenin and Stalin and Mussolini and Kim Jong-il and Pol Pot and all those other baddies that certain Jesus tards keep throwing at us on a daily basis. Maybe that's why atheist politicians have barely a snowball's chance in hell in this country, despite the constitutional ban on religious tests in office. Going by the same reasoning, it would be insensitive to the family members of victims of these tyrants who also happen to have been atheists. If you're of Japanese descent, then clearly you deserve to be thrown into an internment camp if Japan ever attacks the United States military base. If I have to be any more clear, guilt by association is BS. It's not an argument. It's nothing more than a gross mob attempt at grabbing at a rare opportunity to express what is currently acceptable bigotry. Personally, I don't care if Park 51 goes through. But if it doesn't, I don't want it to be because the owners bowed to the pressure of ignorant, savage, scared, limp little people like her.
America!
You first.